When the person you care about begins to fade, when her texts grow colder, her voice turns hollow, and you're left staring at your phone in silence, it's like a punch to the gut. Confusion, doubt, a sense of slipping. It hurts. And in that quiet panic, most men make the same mistake. They chase. They plead. They try to win her back with words she's no longer listening to. But that desperation, it doesn't inspire love. It drains it. What no one tells you is this. When she pulls away, it's not always because she's done. Sometimes it's because she's watching, testing, measuring who you really are beneath the charm, beyond the surface. And how you respond in that moment says more about your worth than 100 promises ever could. If you collapse under the weight of uncertainty, if you rush to fix what might not be broken, if you beg for reassurance instead of standing tall, you confirm her fears. You show her the mask of confidence was just that, a mask, fragile, easily cracked by silence. Women aren't drawn to men who crumble. They're drawn to men who can hold themselves together, even when the ground shakes beneath them. It's biology. It's instinct. In a world where everything is uncertain, she's looking for someone who isn't. Not someone who needs her to feel whole, but someone who is already whole on his own. That's the mistake most men make. They confuse affection with necessity. They think needing her makes their love stronger, when in fact it makes them weaker in her eyes. There's nothing attractive about a man who has lost himself just to hold on to someone else. And the sad part is, most don't even realize they're doing it until it's too late. Imagine this. Two men, same heartbreak. The first man feels the shift and panics. He reaches out again and again, pouring himself into messages, over-explaining, apologizing for things he didn't do. And every time he reaches, she steps further away, because with every word he shows her she was right to pull back. Now picture the second man. He feels the same shift, the same silence, but he doesn't flinch. He doesn't retaliate, doesn't beg. He remains calm, not because he's cold, but because he knows who he is. He understands that love isn't something you trap. It's something that stays willingly. And if it doesn't stay, he knows he'll survive. That kind of stillness, that's power. And that's exactly what women feel. Power, not control, not manipulation, but the kind of grounded presence that says, I want you, but I don't need you to be whole. I care about you, but I will not crumble if you leave. That's not indifference. That's self-respect. The moment a man learns to let go with dignity is the moment everything changes. That doesn't mean you stop feeling. It doesn't mean you don't care. It just means your value isn't up for negotiation based on someone else's uncertainty. But here's the truth most run from. People settle. They accept mediocrity in relationships out of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of the unknown. So they stay. They shrink. They convince themselves that emotional distance is just a phase, that the bare minimum is enough, that love is supposed to feel like this. Lukewarm and unsure. But deep down they know. When someone values you, you don't have to question it. You don't have to beg for it. That's where strength comes in. When you stop tolerating breadcrumbs. When you stop justifying coldness. When you stop shrinking to fit into a space you were never meant to stay in. Because love, real love, is never about proving your worth. It's about being seen, fully, without needing to perform. And when you finally understand that, you stop chasing. You stop pleading. You stop showing up for someone who's barely there. Because you realize your presence is not a gift to be wasted on someone who treats it like an afterthought. You become the man who walks away not out of spite, but out of truth. And that truth is this. You are enough, with or without her, and that is the most dangerous kind of man. The one who stays grounded when the world tries to pull him apart. So what do you do when someone you care about begins to pull away? When her affection fades, her presence grows distant, and you're left standing there, heart in hand, wondering if you should fight harder or finally let go? You do the hardest thing imaginable. You step back. You reclaim your time, your energy, your dignity. You stop allowing someone else's inconsistent emotions to determine your worth. You don't chase. You don't beg. You simply stand firm in who you are. Because here's the truth. When you stop reacting and start holding your ground, you force clarity. She's now faced with a choice. Either she sees what she stands to lose and returns with real effort, or she continues drifting away, revealing that she was never fully invested in the first place. And either way, you win. You win because you didn't compromise your self-respect. You win because you didn't settle for a love that came in fragments. You win because you chose strength over desperation. Women may not always say it, but they respect men who respect themselves. If you make it clear through your actions, not just words, that indifference won't be tolerated, that your presence is earned, not owed, you become undeniable. Not because you're playing games, not because you're cold or manipulative, but because your life is already full, with or without anyone else in it. That quiet confidence, that unshakable presence, that's power, real power. Yet too many men hand that power away. They fall into the trap of proving themselves, performing for love, trying to earn affection like it's a job with requirements. But ask yourself, do you really want someone you had to convince to stay? Do you want a relationship where your value is conditional, where you're constantly having to prove that you're enough? Or do you want something deeper? Something built on mutual desire, on mutual respect, where both people choose each other, not because they need to, but because they want to. A woman who truly values you doesn't need to be convinced. She sees you. She admires you. She wants to be a part of your world, not because of what you do for her, but because of who you are. And if that's not what she's giving you, if she's half present, emotionally distant, offering the bare minimum, then the greatest act of strength you can show is to walk away. Not as a tactic, not to get a reaction, but because your peace matters more than proximity. Because the moment you choose self-respect over fear of loss, you stop losing, you stop begging, you stop waiting, you stop handing over your sense of worth to someone who isn't treating it with care. And that's the difference. That's the line between the man who is constantly abandoned and the man who is truly valued. The man who knows who he is doesn't plead to be chosen. He simply is the choice. And maybe the hardest part isn't when she says goodbye. It's when she says nothing, when she ignores you, when you become invisible in her life. That indifference, that silence, it cuts deeper than anger ever could because it makes you question everything. But understand this, when she withdraws, she's already made a decision. She may not say it out loud, but her distance is the message. And the more you try to hold on to something that's slipping away, the more of yourself you lose in the process. That's the part most men struggle to accept. They can't believe someone could lose interest after all the effort, all the love, all the loyalty. But life doesn't always reward effort with results. Love is not a transaction. Attraction isn't a debt that gets repaid. You're not owed commitment just because you were kind. And the harder you try to prove your worth through tolerance, through patience, gifts, silence, the more you lose her respect. Because deep down, people don't admire what they can walk all over. Respect and attraction are built on the same foundation, strength. And if you sacrifice your boundaries, your standards, just to keep someone around, that strength vanishes. You become the backup plan, the fallback, the easy option, and nothing kills desire faster than neediness. Because even if she comes back, it won't be with admiration, it'll be with resentment. She won't even fully understand why, but a part of her will always feel it, that you broke your own code just to keep her close. So you do the only thing left to do. You let her walk. You don't chase. You don't perform. You let her go, not to teach her a lesson, but to teach yourself that your value isn't determined by whether she stays. And something begins to change. You stop checking your phone. You stop analyzing every silence. You begin pouring your energy into your own life, your vision, your future. And slowly you become the kind of man who doesn't wait for happiness, but builds it himself. And when you do that, when you stand in that space of power and peace, you become magnetic. Not because you're trying to be, but because you are whole, grounded, enough. And if she ever comes back, it won't be out of guilt. It won't be because you convinced her. It will be because she remembers. She remembers the strength, the stability, the calm, the man she once took for granted. But if she doesn't come back, then you'll know she was never meant to stay, because a woman who truly sees your worth doesn't gamble with it. And that is the quiet difference between the man who is constantly overlooked and the one who becomes unforgettable. He felt it the moment her energy shifted. She didn't have to say a word. Her silence, her pause before responding, the distance in her eyes, it said more than any sentence ever could. And in that moment, everything inside him screamed to act, to fix it, to fight for her, to prove himself worthy of staying, because that's what he thought love was: proving, convincing, holding on no matter how hard she pulled away. But beneath that urge wasn't love, it was fear, the fear of rejection, of being alone, the fear that maybe, just maybe, he was never enough to begin with. So many men fall into that trap. They feel her slipping away, and instead of standing tall, they shrink. They abandon their mission, forget their values, and direct all their strength into chasing something that may have already left. They stop being the man they were building and start becoming a shadow of what they think she wants. But here's the brutal truth. Once you give up your dignity to earn someone's affection, you've already lost. Not because you weren't good enough for her, but because you stopped being good enough for yourself. A woman isn't drawn to a man who bends, breaks, and betrays himself for her approval. She's drawn to a man who knows who he is, with or without her. A man whose strength isn't in how hard he clings, but in how calmly he lets go. When a man panics, when he scrambles to please, when he says with every action, "Without you, I am nothing," he isn't winning her heart. He's losing her respect. Because no woman wants to carry the weight of a man's identity on her shoulders. She wants to feel his strength, not his dependence. She wants to know that even if she doubts, he doesn't. So when she pulls away, what do? You don't chase. Not because you're playing games, not because you're trying to teach her a lesson, but because you understand that your worth doesn't decrease just because someone else couldn't see it. You stay your course. You focus on your path. You hold your standards not to punish her, but to protect yourself. That calm, quiet resolve, that's what shifts everything. And when that shift happens, something incredible unfolds. The neediness disappears, the pressure vanishes, and in its place stands a man rooted in self-respect. And that energy, it's magnetic. Because a woman doesn't truly want to be the center of your universe. She wants to orbit something solid, something that doesn't crumble when she turns away for a moment. If she ever cared, she will feel the absence of your desperation. She will notice that your world doesn't stop spinning just because she walked away. And in that silence, a question will echo in her mind. Was I walking away from something rare? Something real? If the answer is yes, she might return. But not because you begged, not because you chased. She'll return because she sees now what you never had to say. You were never waiting. And if she doesn't, you've still won, because a man who knows his value never truly loses someone who didn't see it. That's the dividing line between those who are forgotten and those who are unforgettable. The forgotten cling and crumble. The unforgettable stand tall, even in heartbreak. But most men don't see it. They hold on to illusions. They make excuses. Maybe she's just busy. Maybe she's just scared. Maybe if I wait long enough, she'll come around. They rewrite the truth until it fits the version they wish was real. But deep down they know. They know she's gone. They know she's not choosing them. And instead of walking away with their pride, they trade it for one last shot at being noticed. Here's what they miss. You can't earn love by giving more of yourself to someone who already stopped seeing your worth. You can't chase someone into loving you. And every time you ignore the signs, every time you silence your instincts, you're not proving your loyalty. You're proving your lack of self-respect. And women, they sense it. They feel it when a man is desperate, when he's afraid, when he's clinging to something that's slipping through his fingers. And with every act of chasing, he becomes less of the man she once admired. The truth is simple. Love that is real doesn't require you to beg. It doesn't demand that you shrink yourself. It doesn't thrive in desperation. Either it's there or it isn't. And if it isn't, You have two choices: protect your dignity and walk, or destroy yourself trying to force something that was never meant for you. Because the men who choose the second path, they don't just lose her, they lose themselves, piece by piece. They pour out their energy, their ambition, their fire into a void. And what's left? A shell, a man who no longer recognizes himself. Meanwhile, she watches and feels nothing. Maybe pity, maybe annoyance, but never desire. Because nothing is less attractive than a man who doesn't know what he's worth. So what do you do when she doesn't choose you? You leave, not with rage, not to make her regret. You leave because you know that love should never cost you your soul. You walk because your time, your energy, your heart, it's rare, and it will not be wasted on someone who treats it like it's common. And something shifts the moment you do. You reclaim your power. You break the chains that tied your identity to someone else's approval. You make space for someone new, someone who sees you, chooses you, respects you from the start. And here's the twist. The moment you stop chasing might be the moment she finally looks back. Because you're no longer begging. You're no longer waiting. You've become the man who doesn't need her. And that, more than anything, forces her to feel the loss. But by then, the question isn't whether she still wants you. It's whether you still want her. Because the man who knows his worth, he never has to beg to be chosen.